Eastern Japan, spring, wet ground, steam rising off horses, the air smells of pine pitch and damp cord. Arrows are already up. Watch the man riding into them. His left hand is holding a bow, no shield on his arm, not slung across his back, nothing at all between his chest and the sky. Every other army on earth carried a shield that season. Greeks carried them, Romans carried them, Vikings carried them. This man carried none, and he rode forward anyway. He was not being brave about it. He had a shield. It was simply not in his hand. That last line is the whole story, and it takes some earning, because the shield did not vanish in Japan. Nobody beat it. Nobody banned it. Nothing better came along to take its place. It moved, quietly, completely. It came off the arm and went somewhere else entirely, and where it went explains how these men fought and how they stayed alive on open ground for centuries. Most of what you know about the samurai starts with a sword. It should start with a bow and an empty hand. Think about how strange that is. The shield is the oldest thing a soldier ever owned. Older than the sword, older than armor, older than the horse in war. Before anyone learned to work iron, people were already strapping wood and hide to the left arm. Every warrior culture on earth found it. Greek hoplites built a wall out of theirs and pushed. Roman legions locked theirs overhead and walked into arrow fire like it was rain falling on a roof. Norse crews lined the rail of a ship with them and slept behind them at sea. Every army there arrived at the same answer on separate continents without ever talking to each other. So why not Japan? The answer is in his hands, and it is simple. He is holding a bow taller than he is. The Yumi runs past 2 meters. It is not gripped in the middle either. The hand sits about a third of the way up from the bottom. That makes the whole thing lopsided, and it lets the long limb swing clear of a horse's neck without fouling the reins. A bow like that takes both hands, always. Both of them, every single draw. There is no version of drawing it with a single arm. So the left arm, the arm every other soldier on earth reached for when the arrows came, was already busy holding wood. That is the trade, and it leaves a question lying in the open. What did this man put between his chest and the arrows? Here is where the sword gets in the way. We picture the samurai as a swordsman because films put a blade in his hands and stopped there. The men themselves never described it that way. Their own phrase for the work was the way of the horse and the bow. Horse first, bow second, blade third, if at all. The sword is not even in the sentence. For long stretches of that history, a samurai was a mounted archer who happened to carry a blade for the moment when everything close in went wrong. The blade was the backup. The bow was the job. Now, look at what he was wearing, because the shield starts to reappear here. His armor was not a shell, no solid breastplate, no single sheet of steel across the chest, nothing rigid running from shoulder to hip, not a hard piece anywhere. Instead, there are hundreds of small lacquered plates, iron ones and leather ones, most of them no wider than 2 fingers held together. Every plate is punched through and laced to its neighbors with cord. Kozain, they were called. The point is the joint between them. The whole surface bends. Then there are the shoulders. Sitting on top of each is a broad square panel that hangs down over the upper arm, heavy, soft at the edge, swinging loose. Osode. Look at the size of them. Museums describe them plainly. They were built like shields. That is not a word somebody added later to make it sound better. They are the size of a shield, the shape of a shield, laced like a shield. They simply are not held. When he lifts the bow and twists his body to draw, those panels swing forward across his chest and cover the gap the movement opens. The shield followed the arm instead of occupying it, and that is the first half of the answer. None of this was free, and I am not going to pretend otherwise. Silk lacing looks beautiful and behaves badly. It drinks rain. A suit that came off the rack light could soak up a storm and sit on a man's shoulders like wet sand. In a cold season, it stiffened with frost overnight. It never dried fast. It held dust and grit in every gap along the chest. It took hours to dry and days to repair, and it had to be pulled apart before it could be cleaned properly. Somebody spent a great many quiet hours keeping that surface alive. So picture what this man actually had, riding at a line of archers. No wall in front of him, no trench, no rank of men to crouch behind, nothing but a moving horse and a bending skin of small plates. And speed, above everything. That was the real defense, and it is the easiest thing here to miss. A shield protects the man who is standing still. It is the wrong tool entirely for a man who refuses to stand still. That balance held while the bow ruled the field. Then the fighting changed. Armies grew, foot troops got spears and long polearms, and battles turned into a press of bodies where nobody had room to shoot. Suddenly, those big shoulder panels were a problem. They caught the arm mid-thrust. In a crowd, they snagged on every man nearby. So, the armor shrank. The great shoulder pieces got smaller and tighter, and lighter suits took over the field. Here is the strange part. Even then, with the bow out of the way, the shield never came back to the hand, which is worth stopping on for a moment because you have both sides in front of you now. A wall you carry which keeps you safe and slows you down, or an empty hand which keeps you quick and leaves you open. Which trade would you have taken? Write it under this video because I honestly want to see how the split runs. The men on foot had already answered it, and their answer is the part almost nobody tells you. Ashigaru, the foot troops, were not carrying shields on their arms either. They had bows. Later, they had matchlocks, and a matchlock needs both hands even more than a bow does. You load it standing. You brace it with the left. There is nowhere on that body for a shield to go. So, the same problem came back, bigger, louder, and with smoke in it this time. If a story built this carefully is what pulls you in, tap like now, because that small tap decides whether the next person ever finds it. Think about that whole line standing there. Every man in it has both hands occupied, not a single free arm anywhere along the front. Nobody able to lift anything for cover, nothing overhead, and they are out in the open, waiting for the other side to shoot first. This is the exact situation a shield was invented for, and not a man in that line is holding a shield. So they put the shield on the ground, walk out in front of a Japanese battle line, and you would find a row of tate. Standing shields, flat boards, roughly chest height on a grown man, about as wide as your arms held open, cut from planks a thumb thick. On the back of each is a hinged foot that folds out and props it upright. They were set down in a row and overlapped along every edge, the way tiles overlap on a roof, until the front of the army had a wooden wall running across it. Archers shot from behind them. The sound of arrows going into those boards is the sound of a wall doing its job. When the line moved, the wall was picked up and carried with it. That is the whole trick, and it is so plain it sounds like nothing. Every other army made a man carry his wall. Japan made the wall stand up by itself, and once it is on the ground, it does not need to be light. It can be thick in a way no arm could ever hold. It never gets tired, it never needs feeding, and the man behind it gets his hands back. When guns arrived, the answer barely changed. They made the boards heavier and packed rolled bamboo behind them because a thick wall stops a bullet and an arm never could. That answer never really went away either. Look at any soldier alive today. Both hands on the weapon, nothing on the left arm, no shield anywhere on him. The shield came back for police work and almost nowhere else, and even there it mostly stands on the ground or rides on a vehicle. Now look closer at the vest he is wearing. Small hard plates held in a soft flexible carrier bending with him as he moves. That is a laced panel of kozane with the cord swapped for nylon. The thinking is the same, and it is still winning. I should be honest about the limit of all this. It was not a perfect answer, and it cost them. Men on horseback took hits a shield would have stopped, and a standing wall is only a wall while you are behind it. The moment a line pushed past its own boards, the front rank was bare again. They accepted that. They decided a free hand was worth more than a covered chest, and they held that decision for centuries while the rest of the world held the opposite. Picture him again, right back at the start. Wet ground, steam off the horses, arrows still in the air, nothing at all on his left arm. So here is my own question for you before we finish. When did you last give up your cover to keep your hands free? Because that is really what this is. Not a story about wood and cord, a story about the choice between being safe and being able to act, made by men who lived with what came after. Next time you see a samurai on screen, look at the left hand, and if it is empty, that is not an oversight. That is the doctrine sitting in plain sight, and now you can see it. If you want the next piece of this world, subscribe, and I will keep bringing them to you.